Very good morning to you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very grateful that you're taking time to come to my talk. I'm going to be presenting about two things that I'm passionate about today. The first is cybersecurity and the second is people, because without people, cybersecurity really is in trouble. In my role today, I work with cybersecurity teams and enterprise organizations to build training programs that focus on taking good teams to great teams and great teams to elite teams. I do this because today, this is the challenge that the cybersecurity industry faces. And I don't think they're alone. Finding hard people is really tough. Sourcing, enticing, and validating, bringing these people into our organizations in a very competitive market is hard. Stakes are especially high in cybersecurity, where the demand for not just theoretical intelligence, but practical expertise means breaking into a cybersecurity role is very difficult. Competition's very high in cybersecurity, and not only that, even after recruiting these talented people, it's hard to keep them in our organizations because of that competition. So, if we don't focus on continually building our own elite level players, we may leave these critical roles unfulfilled, which means we may open ourselves up to vulnerability. This is how to build an elite cybersecurity team, and today I'm going to discuss how we can create our own blessing of these exceptionally talented people. We'll explore how to not only create a group of theoretically proficient people, but also learn how to create an environment in which they are motivated and innovative. They're prepared to tackle this ever-evolving threat landscape, and we're going to build our own elite team. But when I think about this word and when I thought about this talk and then choosing the word elite, I had to think about what it meant. When I think about elite people, I think they're the best of the best. They're the high performers that we all aspire to be. They've got exceptional capabilities. They demonstrate their expertise. They have a sophistication about them that makes them impactful. They are incredibly innovative, top tier, and they exhibit a mastery for what they do. The one thing all of these fantastically flattering words have in common is that they don't all depend on learned attributes. Elite performance depends both on attitude and experience. Now that said, of course, to be elite, you have to be brilliant. But how do we get our people to be brilliant? This is where cybersecurity becomes really interesting, because people who take cybersecurity get into it from many different paths. Some start with the idea of becoming a security engineer, while others gravitate towards it. They are the IT admin or the software developer who figures out that cybersecurity is the track that they want to be in. They have the will, but may not necessarily have the skill, and that we can train for. Elite teams have both of these things, the will and the skill. And having both results in this wonderful word, impact. The people who make the most impact on our organizations are the people that we want to work with. They're our star performers. All of you know one. Hopefully some of you are one. And whether you work in cybersecurity or not, our businesses rely on these impact players. In cybersecurity, there's another word for these impactful people. We call them cybersecurity unicorns. No one has more impact on our security posture than a cybersecurity unicorn. These people are exceptionally rare, they're very highly sought after in our industry, and they possess a unique combination of technical expertise, strategic vision, and a very deep understanding for our business, our industry, and how we operate. So I told you these days I spend my time working with enterprise organizations on building these training programs that create brilliant teams and allow them to bolster their security posture. My team and I run over 700 of these training programs in a global portfolio of Fortune 5,000 businesses. So I get to spend my time talking to leaders and learners alike. And today, I'm going to share with you the 5 factors that each of these organizations have in common. Happily, they fit very nicely into a journey made up of 5 stages. And STAGE, S-T-A-G-E, is going to be an acronym that we'll use to remember this 5-step journey. STAGE is going to be broken down into pre-training program launch activities and then post-training program launch activities. But it starts like this. We start with a skills acquisition strategy that aims to identify gaps, benchmark our current team's performance, and set goals. Once we know what we want, selecting the right tools for the job becomes imperative. So we'll look how to do that in the training platform section. Once our training program launches, we'll use KPIs, platform tools, and of course, the benchmark that we set in the skills acquisition strategy to assess its effectiveness. Building in engagement and keeping your people in the training program is going to be the key to success. So we're going to talk about how do we make learning fun. This is going to help ensure that our team's training isn't frustrated. And finally, probably most importantly, we'll talk about managing up and how to get executive support and then keep it. So it starts here with our skills acquisition strategy. Our skills acquisition strategy is comprised of two parts. The first part is seeking to understand. Here we want to understand our needs versus current capabilities. The second part is our action plan, and this is arguably the most important part because here we're going to put our needs assessment into action. But what action do we do? Do we train or do we hire? Successful teams start by measuring their performance against an organization or industry baseline. Terry Pratchett, the famous author, said, if you don't know where you come from, then you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, then you don't know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, you're likely going the wrong way. As leaders, it's critical that we know the nuanced requirements our organization demands of us, and not just inform our team members about these, but equip them to be successful in their endeavors. So, we're going to start by building a cybersecurity competency model by job role. Building a cybersecurity competency model by job role means doing a needs assessment, understanding the current knowledge, skills, abilities, and tasks that our people are required to successfully complete their role. It begins by defining the requirements of the job role, remembering, of course, that you can factor in for leveling or competency. And then, of course, to do this, you can use job descriptions, you can use artificial intelligence, individual opinion, or even structured resources like ONET Online or the NIST, NICE, MITRE frameworks that exist for cybersecurity. You can, of course, do this for any role other than cybersecurity too. So now that we know what's important, we need to prioritize these skills, because if everything's important, then all of a sudden nothing becomes important by definition. Prioritization gives us the ability to focus on the crucial job role requirements. So in my example, I've used a scale from 1 to 3. You, of course, can use a scale that suits you best. And you may want to have different priority levels for different team members, or even different levels in your team, remembering that a strong team is made up of mixed capabilities. So now that we've almost understood where we want to be and what we need to focus on to get there, as a final step, we need to understand on a leveling basis how proficient we require a person to be at those skills. So again, in my example, I've chose a scale from 1 to 5. Given the rate of change in technology, I think it's okay to have a no experience or formal training as a first starting point on your scale. However, that means you do need to build in more training, especially if that skill is an important one based on your prioritization. Later, we'll explore how to hire versus train for these types of skills. And in fact, identifying an area or a skill where you have no experience or expertise against the prevalent risk associated with it presents a very compelling case when asking for training budget or making an argument to leadership for new hires. Finally, now that we know where we want to be, next is understanding where we are. So we need to identify and evaluate our gaps against plan so that we can create focused learning paths. You can assess your team's capabilities with a battery of the following things, whether it be self-assessment, peer reviews, managers' assessments, practical simulations, case studies, and giving them problem-solving scenarios, or even just behavioral observation from on-the-job learning. Your final output should look something like this: a marriage of all of your knowledge, skills, competencies, and tasks against their importance or their priority, and then, of course, the current versus desired level of proficiency. If you can create one of these for each one of your team members and each one of your work roles, you can start to customize and build a training plan that gets you from displayed proficiency level to desired proficiency level. By creating these personalized training plans, we'll address specific gaps in our organization and start to create better resilience. And that's how we start to build an elite cybersecurity team. So, once you have a good understanding of where your training needs to be, you may want to consider if you should hire or train. But what do you do? Do we hire or do we train people? Considering the current competitive landscape in our market and the challenges we face finding elite team members, you may want to consider the benefits of promoting from within before going to hire. Elite team members are not only technically talented, but they also have a deep understanding of our business. Therefore, critical to building an elite cybersecurity team is making sure that they understand our business, what it is we do, and who better to do that than the people who are currently living in it. Promoting from within also has unique advantages. Individuals already embody our culture, the values of our organization, and they understand our internal workflows. They can leverage this knowledge to build more effective security strategies. Over time, hopefully these employees also become our cybersecurity unicorns. Bringing in new people, of course, means we've got to train them, teach them about our organization, the products, our processes, and all of our tools. While promoting worthy employees means that they can hit the ground running. They can do it faster. These people also tend to be more motivated by the recognition and contribute towards the cultural upliftment of our team. Valued members want to give more to further our team and our company's causes. More motivated individuals means a more motivated team, a valued team who feel like they're part of a winning team. And finally, we can create tomorrow's leaders by doing this. They're uniquely equipped to drive our organization forward. So now that we know why it's so beneficial to promote from within, how do we promote from within? Of course, it's about identifying worthy candidates. But you can also do it by leveraging one of the following techniques. The first is a certificate bounty or any form of educational bounty. And this basically means aligning incentives like salaries or bonuses or even promotions with new qualifications. There are up-leveling programs where members work through stages. For example, if you up-level into a lead tester that can then start to teach, train, and coach, and that creates a cycle of upskilling. We need to give our people tools, especially in cybersecurity. Tools are one of the biggest assets that we have in our weapon or arsenal against cybercrime. We can also keep turnover low by doing this, by aligning incentives to career progression and culture. And then, of course, as you hire, you want to look for people who have the will. They embody the same cultural things that we find important, not just the same skills. So I touched on culture just now, and it really becomes the glue that keeps our business together. Peter Drucker, who's a famous businessman, said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I used to work for an organization who was based in the US, and their president used to come out to visit us once a quarter. The first time I ever heard him speak, he spoke about wanting this company to be a long-term home for all of us as employees. He said, I want this company to put your children through college, and I want this company to pay your mortgages. And in that moment, I felt like, wow, I feel valued here. That being said, he also said this: here we strive for everyone to feel like valued members of a winning team on an inspiring mission. Their mission, or their mission statement, was fanatical support in all we do, which is one of the questions we get asked, is what does fanatical support mean? And in that moment, I felt valued. I joined the organization because I needed a job, but I stayed with the organization because I loved what they were doing. And this is where you need to start with your cultural evolution. Help your team members see how their work contributes to your organization's mission. Cybersecurity professionals especially are often motivated by the impact of their work on protecting the organization and its stakeholders. Now, each of us will have a different idea of what culture is ideal to us, but what are the 5 things that most successful organizations that I work with, what do they place importance on? The first is avoiding fear of failure, and this is all about encouraging experimentation. This is fostering an environment where team members feel safe to explore and test new ideas, come up with unconventional solutions. And cybersecurity is very unconventional in a lot of ways. The second is creating empowerment opportunities, and this is about giving teams the ability to make decisions that are crucial to their job roles, because empowered teams are often more engaged and often more proactive. Collaboration and knowledge sharing should be at the heart of everything we do. At least I think so. And fostering that collaborative environment with team members can help share knowledge, create challenges where you can overcome them, and of course, solve complex problems. The next thing you want to do is instill an adversarial thinking or a threat intelligence-driven mindset. And you can do this by fostering an approach where professionals are persistently looking to explore perspectives and innovative solutions. We're going to talk a lot about learning in this session, and this is one of the things that we have to do continuously. The last one there is about celebrating learning and making it continuous. This is probably the most important thing. Because with constant change in cybersecurity comes the requirement for constant learning. This needs to be recognized and celebrated in your elite team. You need to build time and space for your team members to be constantly learning and encourage it by having them do reviews past incidents or talk about different ideas in team meetings. There are a couple of observations I'll share with you shortly. The Australian Public Services Commission did a study into continuous learning, and today we're going to build on that study by refining their definitions for our approach. They defined continuous learning as staying up to date and relevant with the constant rate of change, but it's more than about building new skills. It's about reinforcing existing skills. This means staying sharp on what we know today. They mention a load of benefits for continuous learning, and they go beyond just skills development. They have the potential to increase employee engagement, job satisfaction, knowledge retention, and they also start to form the center of our team's cultural posture. The cybersecurity leaders I speak to talk about things like it builds my team's confidence, it encourages creativity and experimentation, and it leads to efficiencies and better practices as my team do their roles today. The best cybersecurity teams implement continuous learning not just to keep up with the rate of change, but to build their own cybersecurity unicorns, to build their own brilliant people and create their elite teams. So if we make this continuous learning process our goal, what exactly am I asking you to commit to? Well, the Australian Government Commission landed on 4 fundamental behaviors that drove teams to become higher performing, more engaged, and deliver stronger results. The first is to get organizational commitment into this, and that means not just developing personal development plans for your people, but having the learning process celebrated from leadership all the way down to individuals. Celebration here means not just recognition and encouragement, but actual participation. The number of CISOs or CSOs or CTOs who are a part of our training programs and the emphasis and prominence that gives to the rest of the team members speaks volumes. Of course, it's easier said than done to say to your CISO, come and do some training with us. So, how do we do this? The first is to convince our leadership. So when implementing change upwards, we need to be very specific about the language that we use and how we speak about this change. The first thing we need to do is seek first to understand. Understand who your champions are by seeking feedback from individuals outside of the decision room. That can look like impromptu conversations, it can look like observations for feedback, it can mature into direct suggestions where you want to get their input or their guidance. Once you've identified your champions, you then need to convince everyone else. And that's where you need to bring data. Research what similar organizations do, how much it's likely to cost, what are the benefits you're expecting to see. And those benefits need to align with your organization's objectives or goals, if they're going to have an impact, of course. I'll introduce you shortly to another acronym where we'll talk about how do we measure a training program's effectiveness. The next thing you need to do is then, of course, convince individuals. And you'd think this would be the easier of the two conversations, but of all of the training programs that my team and I run, over 2/3 of them struggle with continuous learning. They struggle to maintain engagement. So, we need to convince our teams of the importance of continuous learning. We need to prioritize it by adding it to their annual goals. We need to make it flexible by providing on-demand resources and career counseling. And then we need to introduce gamification and incentives that encourage them to stay involved. Technology-enabled learning access is something we're going to dive into a little bit deeper as we explore training platforms, but it means having access to knowledge or for research, but not just for research, for curiosity too. So this is where a lot of what we see is someone joins our training program because they want to get certified, qualified, they want to complete a course. Whereas we give them a wealth of information with which it can be used as a tool, a resource to do their roles better. So the resources you give your teams will vary from the formalized learning management systems and various other training programs to the informal, like webinars or YouTube, or even virtual conferences or artificial intelligence. We'll explore how to choose the right LMS shortly, but as you consider all of these resources, the most important thing is to consider how you make the learning process organic. It can't just rely on you to drive it. It needs to come from the team. So do things like making it a goal in each one of your team meetings for a team member to present an interesting topic. The start of every one of our meetings starts with 5 minutes of what is the most interesting topic you discovered this week. And then you can rotate that around. Inclusivity in building inclusive and scalable solutions means that the learning resources need to be tailored to the skill level and experiences or even roles within our organization. Now, most organizations or most training institutions have a curriculum style similar to a university where it goes in 100, 200, and 300 level as it goes up in complexity. But you need to not only focus on the complexity of the training, but also what the training is going to enable for this individual. Is it going to be specific to what they do? One of the people I work with has a wonderful question he asks all of our new customers. What does your team do for their job? What are they interested in as an outside of their job? And what do they like to do for fun? If you understand those three things, you can start to create focused training plans that are engaging and will help your teams better perform. Finally, for your training program to be successful, it absolutely has to depend, or at least be aligned with, on your organizational goals and strategy. To do this, you need to understand the needs of your organization and how continuous learning initiatives can support those needs and then make them measurable so that you can report on things like return on investment. It's not only going to make your team more impactful to the business, but it'll help you secure budget, help you speak to how your team drives business outcomes, and allow you to promote a team culture that is a winning team feeling. Okay. I make special mention of this because in cybersecurity today, we spend a lot of time focusing on technical skills, but technical versus soft skills is actually a really important conversation. Some people refer to these as hard versus soft skills, but in cybersecurity, both are equally important for our success. A strong technical background is necessary to handle specific tasks, while soft skills like communication, collaboration, the ability to influence, enable professionals to work effectively in teams and across other departments, while they deliver their findings in an impactful way. An elite cybersecurity team has to have both of these capabilities. But how do we teach soft skills? Because the resources for hard skills are abundant, but soft skills training is really difficult. So teach your team members how to explain technical concepts to non-technical stakeholders. It's one of the essentials for how to be influential. You can do this by pairing senior members with junior members and establishing mentor programs where senior members guide less experienced team members, encouraging collaboration and interpersonal development, as well as that ability to effectively explain complex topics. Offer your team members opportunities to shadow other teams and, of course, welcome that opportunity from other teams too. This is going to drive an understanding of different areas of the organization and enable you to build connections or bridges across your different departments. And the final one is encourage participation in external communities. Do things like public speaking. Encourage them to write blogs. All of this is going to build their confidence and help strengthen their communication. Of course, we can't always train people, so there will be times when we need to hire. I could spend an entire day talking to you about the hiring process or how to identify talented people, but here's when you need to hire versus train. When the skills gaps are critical and immediate. Immediate being the impressing word there. Obviously, when your team is overloaded, and this has to do with your capacity and how you calculate your team's ability to service the organization. When there are new technologies or initiatives, again, I think you should apply a timeline to that, because everyone can learn new technologies or initiatives, but if you have to do it quickly, maybe you need to hire. And maybe there are compliance or regulatory pressures where you need to hire a specialist, or even the expansion of your business operation requires you to have more people. The leaders that I speak to talk to the following 7 things when interviewing in the hiring process. Of course, they look at technical expertise like concepts, tools, technologies, best practices. They look especially at critical thought process, which is giving problem-solving scenarios and then seeing how candidates respond. They talk about compliance requirements and their knowledge around the relevant standards, and they look for communication, those soft skills, both written and verbal, by the way. They ask for supplement of reports and those sorts of things. A strong ethical foundation in their security mindset is really important, as is demonstrating awareness of what's happening in our industry. How do you keep up to date with that? Because if you're not up to date, you're obsolete. And then lastly, of course, they ask for practical examples of past projects when they've run into challenges. All right. So now that we've done our skills acquisition program, we understand what we need. Now we need to go and find a place where we can go and get it. So the second of our 5-step stage journey is training platforms. We know there's a direct correlation between skills development and organizational resilience. Well-trained cybersecurity teams, well-trained cybersecurity professionals possess the expertise to detect and prevent threats early on. Training platforms contribute to this. They allow us to prepare for the inevitable. They sharpen our skills, they allow us to do simulated exercises, and of course, they allow us to collaborate as red and blue teams. So choosing the right one is fundamental to our team's evolution into elite status, because the right tools in the right hands can perform wonders. Now, knowing what to consider and what to look out for will make that choice much less painful. So we'll explore the challenges that you'll face as you look at all of the training vendors, and 5 factors to consider when making your choice. Knowing what to look out for means understanding that the list is likely endless. And if you're not careful, you may fall foul to the impact of uninformed decision making. There may be someone here that mean more to you than others, and that's not unusual. Having a preference, of course, is natural to each one of us. But to help cut through the noise, here's what the best organizations look for when choosing their training platforms. The 6 challenges that most people fall foul to or get thrown by when choosing a vendor are things like this. It's easy to be distracted by what's shiny or loud versus looking for the substance underneath. So make sure you've got very clearly defined requirements before delving into the market. You can use your skills acquisition strategy to support with that. Look for programs that offer a balance of theoretical and practical experience, ideally providing simulations and the like, where real-world scenarios can be tested, and always consider industry recognition. Look for vendors that have qualifications that are recognized and respected. Finally, ask about the breadth and depth of their content. Look for training programs that stay up to date on the latest trends, tools, and threats, and that can be in the form of either newly released content or publications to their existing content and courses and qualifications. Also find out how much content you'll have access to. So how do we make this informed decision? Well, we start by defining our specific goals. Use the needs analysis that we did in that skills acquisition strategy to identify the specific knowledge, skills, abilities, or tasks that we want from a training program. If you haven't done a baseline, you can use those frameworks like NIST, NICE, MITRE, or even Own It online. Focusing on what you want from the platform and working backwards from there will enable you to extrapolate what's needed in order to achieve your outcome. It's critical that the platform serves the competency level of your team. And this means the content can't be too rudimentary because it'll disengage your more senior learners, and it can't be too complex because then it's going to disengage those who are up and coming and trying to learn it. This is going to help you focus on roles-based training and allow you to objectively evaluate your options against each other. The second thing is to evaluate the quality of their content. And here's where I really want you to ask for platform demos. Do they have a multi-focused approach to training? Do they offer a variety of courses and labs, interesting cybersecurity topics, whatever it may be? Use your OSINT skills and go to social media. What does the world say about these vendors, their courses, their qualifications? Of course, look for practical training, look at brand recognition, ask your team members. They're one of your best resources. Would this be interesting? Would it not be interesting? And why? And then, of course, what's on your wish list that maybe isn't in their repertoire or on their roadmap? How do you get it onto their roadmap? Is it going to be difficult or is it going to be hard, easy? Are they going to be a partner to you or just another training vendor? In evaluating the cost versus what you're actually going to get for this, the value, it's going to be a very subjective concept, which doesn't mean we can't objectively add indicators to signify if we're receiving value. So for example, if you're a professional services organization, demonstrable learning outcomes like certifications and qualifications are going to be highly valuable to you. Versus if you're an internal red team, you may want more of a library model, which allows you access to information and knowledge. It's crucial to our position as leaders that we understand and can display a good grasp of the money that we're spending and what we're getting back for it. To do this, we have to understand how we quantify our training. And this is also going to become incredibly handy as we do the managing up and talking to executives. The fourth thing and of the 5 factors to consider is gamification. Continuous learning is all about continuous engagement. In building your elite cybersecurity team, you're going to face challenges, time constraints, personal motivation, even a feeling like your team are overwhelmed with the volume of information that they've got access to. So we need to make the learning journey fun. It's a great way to overcome those challenges. I'll introduce you to this in a bit more detail shortly, but Richard Bartel developed this framework which categorizes personas, and the 4 personas become incredibly important as we look at how to keep people motivated. Your team are going to be a mix of each of these personas, and understanding who fits into which bucket is really going to help you not only choose a platform, but help you keep them engaged in the training. Finally, make sure the platform enables you as an admin or administrator of the training program. It can't require more of you. It needs to service your needs. So in your demonstration, look out for things like a centralized control panel, real-time progress reporting so you can see where your teams are and where they're struggling and where they need support, automated notifications, not things that you need to go and find, insightful or helpful dashboards, and even things like a customer success department. These are people who you can work with, who have an understanding of a variety of training programs and can give you better practice guidance and advice. All of these are going to help you make a better informed decision and hopefully keep your team engaged in training. So now that our training program is alive, we've come to the part where we've chosen our training platform. How do we assess our training's program effectiveness? We want to track our team's progress, and we want to do it regularly so that we're on track to hit our goals. Remember, our goals are important. Set goals for your training programs. We should also provide reasonable updates to our leaders on how we're using company money, and that's our fiduciary duty. If done correctly, the training program can become the forcing function for that cultural change that celebrates personal development, encourages experimentation, and helps you retain your people because they feel invested in and because they want to be a part of that learning cycle. So here's how you can assess your training program's impact, because if you can't measure it, then you can't improve it. Quantifying the value of training associated with your training program will allow you to celebrate successes and also learn from initiatives that have failed. And it'll help you create that elite team with knowledge acquisition at the heart of it. It should be used throughout your training journey, from discovery all the way to conclusion, and you should do maintenance and monitoring activities as you go through it. Each of us are going to have different key performance indicators that we want to understand or help us gain a better understanding of the importance in assessing our training program. So we're going to start here. Training program KPIs, the top one, tells us how engaged our team is in the learning. It lets us know if we've made the right choice in the learning platform and allows us to support team members whose training has become stalled. Here we're looking at comparisons against the benchmarks. We're looking for engagement in general, progress through designed curriculums, and of course, utilization of the content that they've got access to. The next one is our actual team's performance, and this is going to tell us if the training is having an impact. Here, we want to look for, are we moving forward to our elite team status? How do we know that we are progressing? Do we need to course correct in any way? And what you're going to do here is look at those proficiency levels. You're going to do the battery of assessments we did in the first stage, and hopefully against the baseline, you'll be able to measure your team's development. Collection and comparison is all about gathering information. It's all about looking at the data from your training program and comparing the insights and analyzing that data to determine if you're making progress or if your team's engaged. And engagement and progress are not the same thing, because I can be engaged and reading all sorts of things, but it doesn't mean I'm making progress to what our goals are. Are they relevant for my job? Are they relevant for our organizational goals, our commitments? The first thing to be conscious of is the frequency of the analysis that you want to do. My recommendation here is to pull reports at least monthly. Talk to your team weekly about what they're doing in their training program. What have they learned? What's exciting and coming up? Build those sorts of things into your team meetings. From the training programs that we run, it's important that the platform automates these kinds of things for you. Primarily because we're human, we get busy, we forget. And most importantly, if it's automated, then it can enable us to be more efficient. If you don't have automated reporting available, you're going to need to do things like keeping a month-on-month format of your own data in some kind of a CSV or Excel spreadsheet so that you can see progress or change. I started by mentioning this, but engagement and progress are not the same thing. Engagement in the content isn't enough. Learners should be making progress towards your defined goals. So make sure you have the goals at the heart of every conversation you have, and make sure you're course correcting. Set minor milestones that will help you understand whether the progress is on the right track. Continuously seek feedback. This is my one piece of advice and guidance, especially if you're building a culture around the importance of learning. Evaluate and measure the return on investment by comparing outcomes with the objectives that you set by the business, and ensure that improvements are made through training material by establishing continuous learning practices. And this is starting conversations, talking about it often. The last thing here is celebrate. Celebration is a key part of making work fun, and learning is work. It can be incredibly rewarding, but learning takes effort. So recognize the effort by creating space to make it noteworthy. Share it with your team to build that valued team member culture. Share it with your leaders to create that winning team ethos. And then share it with your entire organization to share what your inspirational mission is and the impact your team is having on the company as a whole. So earlier we spoke about gamification and Richard Bartel's taxonomy. Gamification is all about engagement, and engagement is all about value attainment, because if your team are not using it, you're not going to get value from it. So I introduced you to this. It's the foundation of gamification because everyone is different. For your elite cybersecurity team, you need your training program to be a success. For your training program to be a success, you need your people to maintain motivation. And for your people to maintain motivation, you need to offer them a stimulating experience. Ultimately, you need to offer them something that results in dopamine. So that's right, we're going to science our training program with a little bit of psychology. And it starts here. It starts with understanding. It's a journey of discovery. As you group your team members into these different buckets or personas, remembering that people will have a mixture of each one of these. You can do it in one-to-ones, you can have them complete surveys, or of course, there are online personality tests. But the crux of it is this. Killers thrive on competition. They like to compete against other players. So look for environments or training platforms that offer leaderboards or player versus player, team versus team type scenarios. Killers are motivated by winning from direct competition. And you can identify your killers by asking them things like, do you enjoy competing with others, especially in friendly work competitions? Our achievers are very different. They're methodical in their acquisition of knowledge. They prefer to gain points, level up, explore, and complete tasks versus competing. So, look for a platform that enables you to set goals, collect demonstrable learning outcomes like pins, badges, or of course certificates, and look for things like training plans, a curriculum that they can follow methodically. These learners thrive in curriculums. And you can identify your achievers by asking them things like, do you often find yourself setting goals? And what do you enjoy more, the process of completing the task or checking it off? Our socializers, they gain the most enjoyment by interacting with other people. So look for things like already established alumni groups or communities. You can also set up your own internal messenger channels, group learning situations like lunch and learn opportunities. You can find out who your socializers are by asking them if they prefer to work on projects that involve teamwork or collaboration with others or working on their own. And the final bucket here is your explorers. They have an intuitive understanding of the virtual world. They enjoy discovery. So look for an access to a wide variety of topics and content with a variation of theoretical and practical things. They are driven by curiosity, our explorers. And you can discover who they are by asking them questions like, do you enjoy learning new systems? How do you like to learn as they explore? Okay, so now that we know what our team responds to best and we know what their personas are, how do we start? If gamification is all about engagement, it's about learning without feeling like it's work, we can make work fun by doing very simple things. And you can do this whether or not you're running a formalized training program or not. But establish leaderboards, tie rewards to them, create simulated cybersecurity challenges where people can collaborate and engage together. They can be challenged. Use demonstrable learning or at least recognition of skills or mastery, things like badges and certificates. Develop mentorship-based training where people can work together. And then, of course, create environments where you can learn as a group. Group learning, by the way, is one of the most powerful forms of engagement. As you implement your gamification, do incorporate a multi-angled approach. Take the time to differentiate your gamified ideas. Rotate those ideas frequently so that they don't become stale. Use incentives, not just bragging rights, even if it's minor things like a silly chocolate bar or a tiny floating trophy. Create prestige by having senior leaders involved. There's nothing more impactful than that top-down recognition. And then do have fun. That's what it's meant to be about. Okay. The last topic of our conversation, or the last E in stage, one of our most important responsibilities as leaders is managing up. And if you're already at the top, then even managing horizontally. And it all starts with trust building. Trust building with leadership is the essence of securing and maintaining that executive buy-in in a positive and proactive way. It emphasizes the ongoing nature of our relationship, which is crucial, obviously, for us to sustain support. Outside of the office politics, we're going to explore how you can win over economic decision makers by demonstrating control and gathering support. And then we're going to look at business cases and how they tie to company goals. An elite team aligns its effort with the broader objectives of your organization. So we've got to ensure that our cybersecurity measures support and enhance our overall business. Finally, we'll talk about speaking the same language and then gathering support before decision time. Just like us, when we assess our team members, we want to see that they are competent and they are capable. Competency has many faces, but under the surface, it's all the same thing. It's the single question of, can we be trusted with the responsibility that our role demands of us? The only effective way to demonstrate competency and build trust is by being prepared. But what do we need to prepare ourselves with? Being prepared means gathering support before decision time. Don't go into a room where no one's aware of the question or the ask that you're going to have. This looks like one-to-ones or even corridor conversations where you bump into people and you can ask for their advice and guidance. Float ideas with suggestions. Gather feedback from around the company to understand what's important to them and how our initiatives can support theirs. The next is about speaking the same language. And here the same is true with information. What the COO cares about is not the same thing as what the CFO cares about. So remember, when trying to win people over, we need to service their agenda or priorities if we're going to convince them of what we want. All of us are accountable for the fiduciary responsibility of our organizations, and this responsibility means we need to make reasonable and informed decisions. So when asked for spending company resources, we need to show that we are responsible in the decisions we make. The best way to make an informed decision is by using data. Use a mix of both subjective and objective data. And subjective data analysis can look like verbatim feedback, feature comparison, or even your preference as it relates to the research that you've done. Objective data is much more hard. It can be price, volume, number of. You're looking for relative comparisons that you can assign hard numbers to. The next thing is to show you're working, and this is just like going back to grade school when we had to show mathematics and how we got to the answer. Use visual aids. People consume information in different ways. Tables, charts, colorful graphs, whatever it may be, use it to show your journey so that you can bring people along quickly. Not only will this preparedness help in gathering support and building trust, but it's going to establish your position as reasonable and informed in making your decision. The third one there is audible readiness, and this is all about being prepared to defend. And it's reasonable to be asked questions. It's even expected to be given feedback. Don't shy away from those kinds of things. They're gifts. But if you've done your homework, it should be easy to answer questions or even take on feedback. Remember, it's all about how do we get better. The last one is aligning our cybersecurity goals with the organization. And I like to call this sidekick culture. And sidekick culture is all about making either our leaders or our organizations look like superheroes. We want them to be Batman, we're going to be Robin. We're going to do everything we can to celebrate and make them successful. Finally, don't forget to celebrate. I shared this earlier, but success stories are so important as a form of your return on investment. Not only do they create a culture where your team feels like they are inspired and they're a winning team, but that celebration is positive, and positivity is energizing. It talks about that return on investment and, again, that fiduciary responsibility which we all have. So, in recapping, stage is made up of our skills acquisition strategy, selecting the right training platform by understanding what the challenges are and going in with a defined measure of what we want. Assessing our training program's effectiveness is a continuous process where we're looking for course correction. Are we on the right track to complete goals? Making it fun and continuous. It needs to be a process that we keep doing. And then, of course, getting that executive buy-in and keeping it. Training is super important to me as a cybersecurity. We all spend our lives online. So thank you very much for spending time with me today. That's all I've got for you. Happy to take questions or even comments at this point. Otherwise, I will set you free and you can go on your way. Thank you.